specific to surfaces, one of them being extopo.drawing, that's existing topo.drawing. The other one is GIS contours.drawing, and surface start.drawing. Those are the three new CAD files. Feel free to download those under the materials section of your dashboard. Again, if you have questions, chat box. That's where it needs to go. And Zentech, as you know, is an AEC firm, and they help implement and, clients implement new processes, teach training, and all that jazz. If you have any questions about today's materials or, anything else Zentech may have, reach out to them. My name's Heidi Boutwell. I've been doing this for quite some time. I was your trainer for session 1. I'm your trainer for session 2, 3, and 4. 25 years in this world of civil design and engineering. So I've got quite a bit of exposure and experience, and many of the files that we use today, actually some of them are live model files that I am currently using on current projects for the other work that I do. So this will help you get an idea of what a real world example or real world file has to look like for a civil designer such as myself when it's coming from the survey department. We're going to cover 5 key topics today, and we'll go into great detail on these. Understanding surface definitions. What is a surface? What drives it? How does it look? Making the physical surface itself. And then after we've made the physical surface, how do we modify it or edit it? And then the actual physical end result look. How do we handle that style that's applied to the surface? And what happens if we turn on different things and different features in that style? What are we looking at? How do you understand that? And then the ability for surface analyzation, what that gets and brings us to the table for, what we're bringing to the table, what can be used for. There are many different things, but those are the 5 big topics. I'm going to cover a bit more than what is normally taught in surfaces today, because even though this is Civil3D for surveyors, you as a surveyor need to understand what the civil designer needs to appease the county or city reviewer for the project that you did your survey for. And if you understand that, it will help you way better in the field when gathering data. All right, class time. Yeah, I already started recording. We're all here. We're good to go. Again, questions in the chat box. You might want to drag that out separate on your dashboard. Don't forget the materials, and we'll go from there. We'll come back to this PowerPoint after class. So starting right off the bat, I'm going to minimize my PowerPoint over here. I have the 3 main files that are in that materials box: surface start, existing topo, and GIS contours opened up on my dashboard or my Civil3D 2022 program. Okay. And if you don't have your tool space open, again, that's home tab of the ribbon. Click on the big tool space button to bring it back up. At the top of the tool space, we need to make sure it says it's in master view. Same goes when that's on the prospector tab. Same goes on the settings tab. Make sure the settings tab says it's in master view. Okay. Simple stuff. Not a huge thing. So this is going to be interesting today because I'm actually using my desktop since my laptop gave up the ghost. Dell was out here yesterday replacing a motherboard, and it's doing a motherboard burn-in right now over on my other desk. So let's talk about surfaces. In front of you is a big surface from Ferris, Texas. And they're going to take this entire project and we're going to make half of it kind of right down this line and over here to this corner. This left or western half is going to become our commercial zone, and everything on the east side between that point and this point is going to become our residential side. You'll notice I have a big hill in the middle. That's because when they put these power poles out here, they put them on a ridge line. And we have a big hill right here. Again, they built this area up. Now, as a surveyor, when you see this, you're like, that doesn't look right. There's no way that looks right because it's a big hill out there on its lonesome. So when you're out there gathering your point data, you need to kind of take note in your mind. Where are the valleys? Where do they empty to? And where are your hills? Are there really any hills? Is it super flat? Kind of got to know that, because when you go and create this surface, does it look right? Does it match what you saw in the field? Now, if you didn't physically go out there and take all the shots yourself, but you had a group, other people go out, and you're the ones doing the computational part to bring it into Civil3D and give us a surface part. You might want to ask the guys if they took any photos. Photos help. They tell you the world of things. They'll tell you if there's a low spot, like over here. Was there, a catch basin in the photo that maybe they forgot to get? Happens all the time. Don't dock them. Just let them know it. You missed a point. Where's the catch basin for this low spot that's right there? Whereas like over here, we have a head wall, we have a pipe, and we have an exit point. So that tells me that, yeah, we got that. Photos can speak volumes, and I cannot stress that enough. When your guys are in the field, running that rod and total station or the GPS unit, ask them for pictures. I need pictures of stuff so that I know, is this hill really a hill where I'm looking, or is that an error? Because if that's an error, you won't know that without a photo, right? This is based on the survey points, this rise through here, because every one of these power poles is 3 or 4 feet higher, and in this case, 10 feet almost higher than the natural ground. So was that a miscalculation or a missed shot, or was it taken at a separate time and the field book information's incorrect or was not adjusted? I mean, those are good questions to ask your survey guys. Why am I getting this huge rise? If they say there's no rise like this in the field, then my next question is, well, if there's no 10-foot rise, what's going on with your field book file in that area? And that's where the guys on the survey side are going, because that's what you're getting. Okay, so this survey is taken from survey spot shots that were done randomly. If I think they're in here, lay on. And let me move this up so we can see the world, right? What is hiding typing? Oh my gosh. Let's move this on. Lay on, lay. Let's find out if this has the original. Yeah, it does. Most of it. So this survey comes in with a bunch of different stuff. I'm not seeing a bunch of survey shots, so it tells me that I took this from another file and brought it over. Usually there are, survey spot shots everywhere, and I would have turned them off and all this jazz. So this is what I got, though, from the surveyors. I got the adjoiner line work. All surveyors must give us adjoining line work. I need to know in the adjoiners who owns them, who owns each lot over here, what the lot number is, what block it might be part of. I need to know the bearings and the eastings. Is it lot number 4, 5? Don't necessarily need to have distances on existing adjoiners. That's never been asked for. They do want street names and right-of-ways, though. So as a surveyor, and you're going through making your topo files, consider your existing file needs to display all this information for the civil, because the civil must show this in their files. Every little piece of it, even if it's what it was to what it is now, okay? They have to show all of it. That's the survey department of the city and county will actually review a civil's package to make sure that your survey matches what they have on file. So, but again, going back to services. So that's our surface. It's an object. One big object, and like all objects, they have interior lines and arcs, and the view of this object is controlled by the style assigned to the object. Just like a point, the point has a point node, which you can assign a different style to, and the node will change based on what that style is set up to, and the point has a point label. Now, unlike points, surfaces do not have a secondary, for say, label, like a point, where you have, when you lay out a point, you get both a node and a label. That doesn't happen. Not in surfaces. You have to add them later, okay? With the surface, it's strictly an object. Now I'm going to hop over here real quick to my JS contours file, because this helps a lot of people understand that a surface is not two-dimensional in Civil3D. It is three-dimensional. If I type in orbit, ORB for orbit, and I get my little orbit guy going, it is 100% three-dimensional. You can see the ridge lines here. This is actually a freeway, Highway 45, so it's higher. This is an underpass that goes under the freeway. Okay, so you can see that really quite clearly here, that there's a lift and a raise. So all of our line work from the surface is three-dimensional. Okay, not only is it three-dimensional, I can tell you in the style and bring it up real quick. Select the surface, right-click, and select Edit Surface Style. I can turn on the triangulation point, the triangulation line work, the tin lines. Now, surfaces are made up of a tin. Every point is connected in 3 spots, the first spot, the second spot, the third spot, and back to make a triangle. That is your tin, your triangulation irregular network. Okay. What it actually does, if I go back into the surface, select it, right-click, and go Edit Surface Style, and I turn on under the Display tab, the points. When you make a surface from Civil3D, these are the points. They are a copy of the points that are used to create the surface. So if the survey point moves, this point will move. But if I need to make a change on the surface without changing the survey point, I simply do it here in the surface, and it will not go backwards. It goes from the ground up. So points to surfaces, to alignments, to profiles, to corridors, to a new surface, in that order, okay? You can't go surface to point backwards and get the point to change. You must change it at the point level, which now affects the next level, which is surface. And in my alignment, if I want my alignment or my profile attached to my alignment to change, I can't change my profile. I have to go back to the surface, change the surface to change the ground profile that might be referenced along an alignment. So you don't go backwards, you go forwards. You go points, surfaces, alignments, profiles, corridors, and a final design, surface. That's pretty much the build process. So again, this may be made from actual points, or it may be made a different way. You can make surfaces multiple different ways, okay? When you make a surface in your tool space on the Prospector tab at the top, the bolded file is the current active drawing that you might be in, any one of these. If you expand the surfaces collection, you'll see the surface name under it, okay? I can get to the surface 5 different ways. I can get to it through the tool space by selecting the surface, right-clicking, and I have options for rebuilding, meaning I made a change, I need to force a rebuild. I could leave it to rebuild automatic. Every change I make automatically updates the surface. It's annoying as I'll get out sometimes. This works great for an existing surface. This does not work great for a final design surface. I can make a quick snapshot, take out a snapshot, rebuild the snapshot I made because I made enough changes that the snapshot's now out of date. I can add labels, so adding labels to like contour labels, slope labels, spot shot elevations, that type of thing. I can delete the entire surface object. Combine, if I hit go delete, it goes bye-bye. No matter what's in it, it's gone. Unless this surface is referenced into another object like a corridor or maybe a profile, then it won't go away. I can select the surface. When you select something, it always highlights. I can zoom to, so if I can't find my surface, I'm out here in outer space. I'm just going to do that. Get way out there, right? There you go, outer space. I right-click on my surface and I say zoom to. It puts it in a 2-dimensional wireframe, takes it completely out of 3-dimensional that I may have had it in, and it zooms right to it, okay? Quick way to get back to zoom to. Again, right-clicking on the surface object within the tool space, you'll have other options like pan to. You can lock it so it can no longer be edited or moved on accident. You can unlock it, and you can export it to a DEM file or a land XML file. This is important. The DEM, not so much, unless you're doing with LiDAR data and it's really large, okay? The land XML, that is a universal talking file that will talk between Civil3D, MicroStation, or ProRoads, or just MicroStation in general, and about any other 3-dimensional type of program out there, including your total stations, Trimble, Leica, Sokia, all of them. They all will take an XML file. If I take, whether it's an existing ground or a finished ground, design ground, and I export either one of them and send them out and then open it up into your total station, and let's say, for example, I exported out a design file, and you open it up in your total station, on the ground in the field, nothing done. You haven't gone in and adjusted the darn thing. And as long as I started from a good known surface and good known survey points, okay, I used the same survey points that you gave me. I didn't change them. I mean, you may have told me you had to make an adjustment because something was too tall, you know, too much height. You had to remove it. I had to go change that, whatever. That doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is I'm in the same datum, same coordinate system, and I designed directly off of them. So there's some benchmark points. I can match them up, right? If I export out that land XML design file, you go and you take it and you open it up in your total station in the field. And in that design file, let's say I had manholes for sewers, or curb inlets or catch basins, or even a water line like a water valve, or I personally drew in three-dimensional feature lines. Now, I've had this happen, and surveyors love it when I do this. Send them out an XML, they go out in the field, they get this XML, they open it up, and they see not only in the XML the surface, but they see the points and the feature lines that I created, and they're able to go around to every little spot on that open ground field, and every time they get near something, manhole 5 feet away, manhole 4.8 feet away, manhole 3 feet away, you're at the center point of the manhole. Manhole here, rim elevation, cut fill number. All from that land XML file. I didn't have to do anything other than give you a land XML. You get out there and you have fun. I actually got, first time I had this happen, Sandy, Oregon. It was the funnest thing in the world. I got a survey guy out there. He's out there surveying we were doing a multifamily job on a valley, in a hill in the valley. And we're talking like a 45-foot degree difference between top of bottom to, top of the hill to bottom. Nice side slopes, kind of flat. Anyways, I got out there. He wanted to do the building corners and he wanted to do the road. But I sent him the land XML, just like here. I went down, I hit export land XML. The awesome box came up. I selected everything in that box, everything that I had in my design file. Okay, every little thing. And then I told it okay, and I saved it. I gave him that file. And he gets out there in the field, and he goes, not only did I do the curb and gutter of the roadway and the building corners, I went ahead and put in the sewer system, the storm system, the water system. I got all the erosion control stuff in there. Oh my gosh, Heidi, what a lifesaver. I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to go turn anything. I didn't have to go adjust anything. I didn't have to go move anything. I didn't have to do all this other stuff I've always had to do. And he was so thrilled. And the next time I said, well, now I have some changes because we had to modify the design. That was like 3 weeks later after he tells me this. He goes, well, just give me another XML. I'll go fix it. It was, for him, the surveyor, it made his life so much easier. And everybody always thinks, well, you have to convert this land XML for your total station. He goes, that is not the case. All I had to do was open it. It opened up like a three-dimensional drawing. All I had to do was figure out where I was at. And once I figured that out, everything else was easy peasy. I'm like, all right, we'll do that. We'll just keep doing that. We'll send you out XMLs. Some surveyors don't understand that concept. They think they have to get an XML in or get points in from you, and that now you have to make this field adjustment and do all these other adjustments before you take it out in the field because, of the circumference of the earth and all that jazz. Nope, don't have to do that with land XML. It'll save you time. Anyways, moving on. My quick explanation. So as you can see, a surface is an object. When I select it and I right-click on a surface, whether it's in the, from the tool space and the object name, or right-click the surface object in the model, and I right-click on it and I choose to edit the surface style. The surface style in plan view, there are 3 different views. You can do plan, three-dimensional model, or section. In plan view, you can display points. That's the copy of the survey points, the 10 triangular network, the exterior border, which this one's on, it's white, contours. If it was gridded, you could turn on the gridded stuff. Directions, that's like really directions, like to the next point, here's an arrow. Elevations, this comes into play with volumes. Elevational difference between cut and fill, a difference of 1.2 feet, difference of 3.4 feet between 2 different surfaces, that's elevations. Slopes, and this would be slopes in massive swath patterns, so not arrows, but like a solid hatching of a certain color, and that certain color indicates the slope is 2%, 3%, or 4% in this area. Slope arrows, again, arrows, but colored, again, related to 1%, 2%, 5%, 10% in that area, but arrows showing the direction of flow. And watersheds. Now for a civil designer, watersheds are very important. How do I know which way the water is flowing? Where's my low point? Where's my high point? Where am I putting a catch basin? Watersheds. Okay. Important. Vary. But for you as a surveyor, points, triangles, border, major, minor contours, most likely is all you're going to need. You might need slope arrows for your own information. Just double check a few things to say, is it sloping right? Is that match the photos I see, or I was out in the field, is it the right slope? Okay. There are a lot of other things though up in this box if you notice. So On the display tab in your style dialog box, you have control of what is being displayed when it's going to be printed. Okay. If you turn on anything in here and you hit save and you go open up your sheet, then this is XREF'd into your sheet, it will print it. Or if you just, go to the layout tab and do whatever you show, whatever is shown here is what will be printed. End of story. You can change layers by simply double-clicking or single-clicking in the box to figure out what layer you want that object displayed on, right? So for me, I chose gridded. I can go and put it on CTopo, and it will change here. The columns can be moved around, drag and drop, if you can get them to behave, which they usually do. You can make them larger, smaller. They can be bilayer or hard-coded. If you hard-code a color here, whatever color CTopo is will be ignored. This is the hard coding area. If you hard code any of these, take them off by layer, it will automatically override anything in the Layer Manager Properties box. Do not do this unless it is absolutely necessary, and that is your company standard to confuse the living daylights out of everybody. Those people who are not real comfortable with styles, get the surface in, and let's say you went up here, you put them on all one layer and you hard-coded it to green. Everything is green, some form of green. And I hit OK. Awesome, it's green. Well, green doesn't print. It doesn't print right in our color tab. For some CTBs, green is bold. For some, it's very light. Really depends. Or your STB, it doesn't matter. Green is not awesome. So your civil designer or your other survey guy who doesn't think much of this thinks, why is it green? First thing they do is they come in here, they go scrolling through the list of layers, and they say, okay, CTopo major says it's 9 and 8, but that's green. And if I change 9 to, I don't know, magenta, nothing happens in the background. Still green. It's because it's hard-coded. Okay, so I have to select it, right-click on the surface, go into my Edit Surface Style option. Oh, look, it's green in 75. To fix it, I select the color, hit By Layer, go OK. And again, select the color, hit By Layer, go OK, and finally apply OK. So to make it Layer Manager controlled, it must state by layer in the style. That includes line types as well in that style. Do you notice this is all solid and continuous? Maybe my minors are supposed to be -2. We'll just change that. Still solid and continuous. Select it, right-click, Edit Surface Style. I'm going to look at my minor. Oh, it says by layer. Well, that should be okay, yeah, it's by layer, so it should be picking up -2. Could be my scale. Because it is CTopo minor, it's an 8. It could be, maybe I need to shrink the scale to a 10. No, that didn't do anything. Take a quick peek here. Sometimes you just don't get awesomeness. Sometimes it just looks like yuck. Let's be honest. Most of the time, though, I don't have this problem. If I check my LT scale, it's set to 1, MSLT scale, set to 0, PSLT scale, try that 0. Try regen, doesn't work. Go back to PSLT scale, go to 1, regen, doesn't work. All right, so I'm not going to have awesomeness. That's fine. I can show you another one where I have it dashed. Not a big deal. Happens, sometimes it doesn't take, sometimes it does. Surfaces are tricky. Okay, let's be honest. Anyways. So that's the styling of a surface, just understanding that before we get moving on too much further. All right, so we understand now to make a surface look a specific way, how to manipulate that style a little bit, and what it is. So going back to our surface start drawing from the materials section of the dashboard there on Go To Me. In this drawing, we have all those awesome points we were working on in the first session, and they have point groups. And I made an extra point group called Topo. Right there. Underneath the tool space, on the Prospector tab, expand point groups, and you can see I made a point group called Topo. We are going to use the Topo point group as the point group for our surface. So how do I get that point group into a surface? Well, first of all, you notice that the surface collection is empty. It always starts empty. You can't just force something in there. You gotta create the surface object, And then you add things to that surface object. To create the surface object, there's one of 52 different ways to get there. You can right-click from Tool Space in the Prospector tab over the Surfaces collection and tell it to create a surface. Or you can go up to the Tool Space, Home tab, create ground data panel, Surfaces dropdown, create a surface. So many options, right? We're going to go from the Tool Space because it's much faster. Right-click and say Create Surface. And when I do that, I have two options for my surface type. In the Create Surface dialog, there are actually four. I can make a volume surface or I can make a regular good old-fashioned surface. Volume means I can compare in one surface to another, and the difference between the two is the volume, okay? So right now we're not doing that. We'll do that in a later time or a much further, advanced surfacing class, but that's what that is. A grid surface means that I have basically a square with a triangle, right? There are two triangles put together to form a square. That's a grid. And that grid may have been provided by a DEM or a collection of points that was spat out that way, like sometimes LiDAR is that way, God forbid, or drone data can be that way as well. But for most surfaces, in most cases, you're going to choose the tin surface. You need to put the object on its own unique layer. Don't just select the layer that defaults here if it's C-topo. You need it on a unique layer because if you turn off C-topo and you have 5 different items besides that surface on C-topo, they all turn off. And that will drive you nuts. You want to just turn off the surface. You want it on its own unique layer. The object must be on its own unique layer so that it can be independently turned off and on. To do that, you select the layer button to the right, and the object layer dialog box comes up. Anytime you see this little layer button, it will access this object layer dialog. The object layer dialog will always allow you to change the space layer name by selecting the layer selection button. But if you want to make it unique and keep that same base layer name, all you got to do is add a modifier. 2 different modifier types, before or after the surface name. We're going to go after, and so it's a suffix. And my rule of thumb is I'm going to put dash asterisk. Asterisk is your wildcard. It picks up the object name and puts it after the dash. So it'll say C-topo dash, whatever I enter for a name right here. Okay. So right now it says C-topo dash asterisk. If I had already filled this out, it would say whatever this name is. I'm going to hit OK, and it stays there. Now, a lot of people do not like to have 125 characters in an object name because you cannot read it over here on the tool space, okay? There's a reason for that, not only here under surfaces, but further down, and I'll show you that in a minute. Why you need to keep your names short, but descriptive. Every object in Civil3D must have its own unique name. It cannot have a duplicate name. It'll put a counter after it, like 1, 2, or 3. That's what this counter's for. If I click in the box once, it will highlight it. I'm going to start off, this is an existing surface. I'm going to start off with EX because I want to make sure I know it's existing. You might have X. Every company has some type of standard, some don't. Your choice then, EX for me. Survey, topo, ground, point surface, I don't know. I'm going to go with survey. Existing survey. Simple, okay? I could add the description. Now I can get wordy. This is points from session 1, surfaces, survey. Okay, I can get really wordy if I really want to. Style, the initial style set that you want displayed after you put stuff into the surface once you start filling in the holes. This is just, you're creating the object name to put stuff into the object. So this is the initial creation point. What style? I select once, I get the multiple ellipsis more button. I select the more button again, and I get the select surface style dialog. Every time you see that more button, that means there's a dialog box that you can access to select something further. In the drop-down, I have multiple options. Those options are found on the Settings tab under the Surfaces collection in the tool space, so I can add to or distract. This is going to be a background because it's existing. If it was proposed or final, it would be considered design. But we're going to go background. Okay, 1 and 5 background. You can do 2 and 10, but in most cases, you'll always do 1 and 5. Unless you're in metric, then it's 0.5 and 2.5, or, yeah, which I was just dealing with that earlier. Render material, I could care less about. When I go into 3D, which I showed you there with the GIS, that's what I mean by render material. Do I really care? Not really. It's there so that when you go to model something as a civil designer, if you wanted to put it into 3ds Max and actually get a realistic view while you're driving down the road, it would model that render material, which might be, if I look, and I'll just show you real quick, render material could be grass. You know, I could put grass short. It would come up greeny and grassy. Greeny, greeny, grassy. Okay. Anyways, when I get all that set up, see that dash asterisk change to existing survey up here, picked up the name. Once I get that all set up, I hit OK. Now, I only made the object. There's nothing in it. It's just an object. If I go to the tool space, expand the surfaces collection, there it is, existing survey. Now, remember I told you we don't want to get wordy with the name. This is why. I get further down here, and I go to my data shortcuts right here. Can you see where this data shortcut is? I'm just going to highlight it. Okay, this is from my, this is where I got the Ferris job from. Star Projects, Miano, the file name, and DS for data shortcuts. It gets really long, and it has a 256 character limit. So if you're way further down the line in your network drive for where this stuff is stored, every one of those little ABCDs, one drive, right? One drive is 5 plus 8 characters, and then the switch itself is another character, so that's 9. There is a 256 character limit that it can display. And that includes the name of that surface. Okay, and when this surface gets wordy, if I can't read it, if it's going way out here, I don't know which one to pick. I need something short and sweet. End of story. Simple, short, sweet, explanatory, so that I understand what it is. Most other people would understand this is an existing ground GIS surface, e.g., or could say EX for existing GIS. So short and sweet, therefore, hey, going with the existing survey. No problem. Okay, anyways, back to the top of our file. Open up the surface start. In the surfaces collection, expand the existing survey object and expand definition. Now, if there was something in the model, you could have selected anything in the model if it was already in the surface, and this ribbon up here would change. But right now we don't have anything. So let's put something in our surface. A surface can have boundaries, break lines, contours, polyline contours, mind you, elevated, not set to 0. So that means when you select a polyline, it has an elevation on it in the properties dialog box. Okay. DEM file, you can go get one. They're XYZ files basically. They're big. I have a surface that's like that. It's huge. Drawing objects. I'm going to expand this out a little bit more so you can see that. Drawing objects. Multiple different things for drawing objects. Survey points from like Eagle Point, Carlton. They make these point objects that are points, but they're not Civil3D points. That's where they would go under drawing objects. Okay. There's also blocks. If you put a block in here and you elevate that block, you can use a block. Text, elevated text. MicroStation does this. When you get a file from MicroStation, the text is elevated if it's a survey object. It actually, you'll say 83.67, and it will read in its properties as a Z elevation of 83.67. Let's see what else is there. If I right-click on it and I click Add, there's quite a collection in here. Lines, 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional lines. Preferably lines with 2 dimensions, you know, 2 different Z's. A 3D face, that's your TIN, your TINN, your triangular irregular network. That's your TIN. Or a poly face, that's where 3 lines are joined together and make a triangle. When you select one line, all 3 of them light up. That's a poly face, okay? Again, they must be elevated. So those are the drawing object options. We can also add in, I'm going to skip over edits because that's for editing a surface after you have stuff in the surface object. Okay. Point files, CSV, TXT, XYZ, point files, point groups, like these point groups specifically, or point survey queries. Maybe down here in this survey, you've got some stuff going on and you did a point survey query and it had an answer and a result. You could do that here. Figure survey queries, again, from the survey points. I'm going to touch on break lines really quick. Break lines are multiple different types of break lines. There are 3 different types. There is your standard polyline break line, elevated and not. There is a 3D break line, which is your 3D poly. So your 3D polyline, which can be converted to a 2D poly by typing in convert 3D polys. Or feature lines, which is Civil3D's version of a 3D polyline. Much nicer, much easier to manipulate. You're not having to use the properties dialog box or a command line interface to do so with. But we will come back to that. Boundaries, you can have an outer boundary, an inner boundary, a hide boundary, and a data clip boundary, meaning I know where the data is at over here. The point file is ridiculously huge. I'll get a 1 gigabyte file if I bring in the whole point file, but I only need this section of this point file, so right here. So I'll make a boundary, and I will select that as a data clip boundary first, and then bring in everything to the surface, and it will only look at the area within the boundary. It won't look at the entire huge point file. It's handy for civil people, maybe not so much for surveyors. Okay, so let's get this stuff, what we already have and what we've worked on before, let's get it into a surface. We have our surface object. We've expanded it. We're in the definition area. To get in a point group or a points, we're going to do a point group. Like I said, I made a topo group here. It does not include the tree points. That's what it's missing, is all these tree points that are here, these guys. Okay. It does include, though, every other point in here. All of the building corners, the sidewalk line, ground shots, the edge of shrubs, all of that. Okay. All right, so to do that, I'm going to right-click over point groups, and I'm going to select Add. Notice I right-click everywhere in Civil3D. Right-click is your friend. It does not matter where your group is at in the order of hierarchy for the point groups. You select the group you want to add, and you click OK. You can select more than one group at one time. You can do multiples. The minute I populate the surface, Civil3D cranks through it real fast, makes a quick 10, and says, boom. There you go, we got a surface. If I select any contour line in the surface, it lights up. It's a surface object. And when it lights up, I get the new ribbon. You will see that you can add data. Everything that you see over there in the prospector is now available up in the ribbon. Edit surface, which we didn't look at much in the prospector, but it's the identical commands. I can do a water drop, which Civil3D civil guys like myself love, because that lets me take a water drop, literally a drop of rain, right? I hit water drop, set it up. I could tell it to do a 3D, put it on a specific path, tell it to have a marker to tell me where the starting of it was. Hit OK. Find a high spot. Turn off my OSnap. So that's 180, 178. I'm going to click right there. And it just traced, if I drop a rain hit here, where is it going? Right through there. What about over here? 185. If a drop rain hits there, it's going there. 160, nothing. Sometimes it finds flat spots you have to go on. So that's like a low, so that doesn't work for me. You have to have it on a high spot, by the way. 186, 17. Drop a rain hits there, it's going that way. So why would I need this? As a civil designer, I need to know the time of concentration. That's the water drop path, is the time of path of time of concentration. So that's and that's why you as a surveyor need to make sure that this is reflecting what's out in the field, because we're going to have to do this stupid little water drop routine that I'm doing right here. Okay. And I'm going to have to go over here, and at one point, one of these lines is going to be super long, and that's the line I've got to use and everything else goes by. But it's all dependent and based upon this surface and how it's reflected. So things that can change in this surface. I can add in break lines to the surface, right? I can add in different things that will make things go. So like the center line of this road, right? Right now, all I got are points. I don't have anything, no break lines in here at all. If I come in here and I draw the center line of this road, I'm going to just do a polyline, KL for polyline. I'm going to grab the node of the point, and I'm going to go down to my OSnaps before I get too far, and I'm going to make sure I turn on node, and then I'm going to turn on my OSnaps, which is F3. F3 on the keyboard. If you don't remember that, that's your quick keyboard command, F3. I'm just going to go node to node. And I don't care what layer I draw this on right now. I can draw it on, I can move it to another layer after I draw it. This is the center line of the road. If this is a crowned road, then we should have a peak, right? Well, it doesn't know that. It just sees center line of roads. So if I, right there, there's the end. If I take a look at my surface, select it, right click on it, and go edit surface style, I need to know, does it see a peak? How do I tell? Well, get up here, turn on triangles. In the plan, on the display tab, in the plan view direction, I'm going to turn on the triangles and I'm going to hit OK. Kind of sees a peak because I see it coming here and going there. So yeah, it does. Not all the time. You won't get that all the time. Matter of fact, you won't get this all the time. Nice peaking where the top of bank, the top of ditch, bottom of ditch, edge of pavement goes on, and what is that? Edge of sidewalk maybe? Not sure what ES is. It could be edge of anything. Anyways, a lot of times you won't get that. So see, we have fence lines. We could do that with building corners. Matter of fact, where is our building corners? Let's take a look at our buildings point group. Right click, properties. Oh, it says it's an iron pin, set to basic, and we need elevation and description on the information tab just to change the look so we can find out there they are. So like our building corners. Okay, that's a good one. If I just polyline up my building beginning, so that's one building. And then another one, fence, building, close, building. Let's see, that's a fence, building beginning, fence. Yeah, it's never fun to try to retrace the steps of the guy in the field. Okay, so those are your two buildings. There's another building over here, building beginning. So he started here, he went here. Where did he go? He went here. Yeah, it's always good, right? Okay, and then you go, where did he go from there? Building, building. This is why you want to get off to your surveyors and tell them you got to do better than this. I bet you this actually goes up here like this. And I explode this. I just exploded it. That's right. I bet this line actually goes down here like that. Bet you anything that's what that goes on. And then I bet you it goes like this. F. Hey, you can never fill it if they have elevations set to them or if they're just straight lines. Because every time I draw a line on a surface, it picks up the elevation. I'm guessing at this because I've never really seen this file too much. They gave me the file and said, here, have fun. I said, all right, I'll figure it out. And this is literally, guys, what your civil engineer will do if you send them a point file. So be forewarned. If it doesn't look right when you get it back, you know why. Okay? Just saying, because that is what will happen. We will guess at what you have out there because we don't have any photos. We have no proof. We have no clue. And we're going, where does it go? So this is a swale line, and I see it picked it up fairly well. That's SWL. But we'll come back here and we'll do that as a feature line. So, okay. So let's talk about break lines. We can do the 3 different types of break lines. I can right-click on break lines within the Topo Prospector tab, existing survey, surfaces collection, the name of your surface, expand it down to a definition, right-click on boundaries and click add, or boundaries, break lines and click add. There are 4 different types of break lines allowed, actually 5. Standard is what I would normally use for a polyline without any elevation, okay? And that will just force the tin to change direction when it runs into that polyline. Proximity is similar to standard. Actually, these two kind of go hand in hand. Standard can use the 3-dimensional elevation. Proximity is the one that you use when all you have is 0, so it knows that there's a proximity and to change direction. Standard is the same setup as proximity, but will also use the elevation of the polyline if it has elevation. A wall is literally a wall, okay? So if this center line of road, let's say that was at an edge of a wall, I would need to select this as wall in this box, and then I would have to, it would ask me to designate the lower or upper side of the wall. What is the side that you want to be the difference of the wall? 2-foot high wall, 3-foot high. So let's say this is a top of wall, and I wanted to select the downslope side, so I'd select the downslope side. Then it would ask me for the difference of that wall. So you have to be careful when doing walls. Depending on how the surveyor shot the shots, if the surveyor was actually at the base of the wall and shot the toe of the wall, then you could get away with saying that this break line is the toe and it's a 4-foot tall wall. And it would take every shot here along this break line that it sees and then would add 4 feet and slightly offset it in the surface. If I say this is the top of the wall, we're going down, you know, we lose 4 feet. Again, every shot here going the direction I say that the wall goes down, offset -4. The problem I have with wall, and it works well in most cases, other than the fact most walls at the top are very smooth and flat and do not reflect jaggedy, jiggity jogs that are actually in the surface. Like, I don't know, the dog escaped under the wall because he dug a hole the size that's like 3 foot by 2.5 feet, and he squeezed underneath the footing and came out the other side. Happens, kid you not, happens all the time. So you can't reflect something like that where you have a jiggity joggity with a wall break line if you just do a straight from top to bottom or bottom to top. If you do from bottom to top and every jiggity joggity is in there, then the top of the wall will reflect every jiggity joggity, okay, even though it's straight and flat. So there are a few minor issues using wall, but I still do use it. So just be aware of that. You can use break lines from a file, okay, and then of course there are non-destructive break lines. So this here would be like a proximity break line, center line of road. And because it's proximity, I do not get the ability to turn on any supplementing or reading factors or what file. I hit OK. I select the polyline. I hit enter by right-clicking, and I got one of my triangles to change. I think that was the one I saw change. Nice. Okay, let's take a look at the building. So the building, I'm going to just select the polyline, right-click, and go into my properties dialog box. And it's going to take me a second because I got to drag it over here. There we go. Oh, look, it's elevated. The whole thing is at 189.563. That's because I started at the polyline here at the beginning. It grabbed the point elevation from the point I started with, and it assigned it to the entire polyline. It's a building. Let's be honest. The edge of the dirt against a building is always 6 inches lower than the finished floor, right? Minimum. Sometimes 8, sometimes a foot, sometimes 2 feet, depends. So they're grabbing the edge of dirt up against the building. Usually what I would do is I'd find the highest spot, 190.6, and I'd add 6 inches. So if that's the case, that's 191.2, because that's really where it should be. That would be my finished floor. Now I can leave this selected, right-click the break lines, click Add, call this my building 1, because there's multiple buildings in here. I'm going to leave it as a standard building. I could turn on the weeding factors if I wanted to. So weeding means any spots, any vertices like these, further than 15 feet apart need to be, distance between weed. Here to here is 15. If it's less than 15, we weed it out. Okay, sorry. The vertice between 15 feet or less will be weeded out. Angle between 2 lines less than 4 degrees will be weeded out. If you're seeing something less than 100 degrees between, it's like one here and 100 degrees away, 100 feet away, it knows it needs to supplement and add something, and an inordinate distance has to do with the circle or arcing, and it needs to be, cornering every foot. We need to add a piece. So when I do this, when I use these, first of all, my mid-ordinance distance should be like 0.1. That way, as I go around a corner, it's looking at every 0.1 feet, not from here to here. So if my arc starts here, and I arc up and around and over, and it's a 30-foot arc, I want it looking every 0.1. If I have it at a foot, it'll look every foot along the arc, and it makes it very joggity. Nobody likes that. Supplementing factors, I usually turn this down to 50. I don't usually weed my lines, but I will do that. And I hit OK. And it's going to change. And then you're going to get this panorama awesome box that comes up. And the panorama always lets you know, the event viewer of the panorama, it lets you know something happened. So at this point, that entire mess that we just added is ignored or duplicated. Oh, okay. Well, now we need to really talk about surfaces. Okay. We got 2 things in there, and we got a panorama event. Now you can clear these events, right-clicking on the, where you go. Of course, you can clear it. Where is it at? Let's refresh. It's been a while since I've had to clear it. It's action. That's what it is. Clear all events. Action and clear all events. Close the panorama. Panorama pops up. There's a way to control that from popping up. But let's talk about the surface object itself and its data and how it handles stuff. If I right-click the name of my surface object and I go into the surface properties, that comes up, there are 4 tabs. And this is important. Tab 1, you can change out the surface style on the first tab, including the render style and the name and the description. That can all be changed. It's not permanent. What you initially chose is never permanent. Okay. Although if this is what was the layer was when you made it, you put it on that unique layer. When you change this name, that unique layer does not change. Okay, that unique layer stays as it was. That one, that's permanent. Okay, but the name can change. So FYI. Now, definition. This is important. So down here in the operation box, I can maneuver the way that my surface is built. Whatever is on top is built first. Whatever's on bottom is built last. When I put a boundary in here, it better be the very last thing, unless I have 2 boundaries, one being an outer boundary and the second being a hide boundary. The hide always goes after the outer boundary. And then if you have a show that goes inside of a hide, that goes after the hide. So remember, order is important, very important. What's on top is built first. What's on bottom is built last. Okay, and these arrows on the left help you move them. So I can take that break line we did, that very last break line, and I can use an up arrow at 1, or I can down arrow at 1. When I do that, the chevron shows up. This is the rebuild me, something has changed chevron. Okay, and in order to rebuild or something, you must hit apply. And this will always happen with the surface, and it will drive you nuts. If I hit apply, I would expect it to rebuild automatically, right? No, every time it comes up with this box and you have an option to leave it as it is or actually rebuild the surface. And I'll choose rebuild the surface. And guess what? That box comes back up. Panorama, love you. But that doesn't disappear all the time. And it finally changed. Good. A little delayed, but hey, we'll go with it. So this is the order of operation dialog. You can also deselect things and here leave them in the surface but not have them be built. If they're check marked green, they will be built. If they are not check marked green, they will be ignored, but they remain in the definition of the surface in case you want to access it later. So it's like deleting the object without deleting the object. That way, if you made a mistake, you can come back and check it back on because maybe you really needed that, but you weren't sure. So you tried it without it first and took it out of the definition, but left it so that you can come back to it at a later time in case you need it. That way you physically don't have to go out here and erase that polyline. Okay, so unchecking does not build. Green checking means it's going to be built. Now let's talk about the upper half, the definitions. The most important one is the build, and I'm going to expand the build. There are 3 things usually that I look at in the build section. The very first one is excluding elevations less than should usually be on. And I need an elevation that I should exclude. So that means any point less than 2,000 feet, negative in this case 2,000 feet, will be ignored. But I can see clearly from my points in the background that everything's in the 180 category. So I'm going to put this at like 150. Number 1. Okay, now change that up. Not all Civil3D programs come this way. A lot of them come with the set to no, and this just goes backwards. To turn this on, you simply go from no to yes. And the minute you come to yes, the next item below it is turned on. Now, if you have a problem with highs in your surface and you know nothing should be over a specific elevation, you could also turn on elevations greater than. Simply select the no, change it to yes, and enter in your upper boundary limit. But for right now, we'll leave it as no. Angles means angles of triangulation. So this angle here, okay? Nothing greater than a specific, nothing greater than a specific angle, yes or no. Is there going to be a maximum triangle length? This is the triangle we're talking about, people. The 10 in your surface, that triangle you see, the maximum length from point A to point B, should there be one? Now, in surfaces where there are wide swaths between the areas, where it wasn't just like this, but you have a point here and then you have a point 5,000 feet away because you have this huge break, but they're all in the same project. Really typical transportation surfaces where you did an intersection over here and way down here, half mile away, you did another one. That's where you would turn on maximum triangle length. and you would give it a distance, an actual distance, no longer than 250 feet. Anything above that is excluded and not to be created. Okay. Convert proximity break lines to standard. So that's those 0 elevation polylines that are just proximity. I said yes, no problem. And that's absolutely fine to do. Okay. And the last one that you must always deal with is crossing break lines. You must have this set to yes if you want this stuff to not happen. Use the average break line elevation at the intersection. So if there's a break line, like this is a break line, 1, 2, they cross that point. This is 2 different elevations. It's going to find the average elevation and do it if there's no point there. You'll see that later in life a lot. Okay, so that's under the build portion. Data operations, I don't usually mess with. I leave it as yes to everything. That has to deal with what you can actually use over here under your object. And edit operations. Can you edit things? Can you add points, modify? If you change any one of those to no, you won't be able to do that. Okay. Next. So this is the most important tab of the surface, the definition tab. The second most important tab of the surface, next to the information tab, which is in every style and object box, is analysis. Analysis lets me analyze this surface. I can take this surface and I can look at it in different ways. I can see what type of contours, elevation, slope arrows, whatever. I'm going to select slope arrows because I want to see them in a little bit. And when I select slope arrows, I can choose a different legend. I usually just use the default. I could care less. Ranges. How many different colors of slope arrows do I want to see? Do I want to see 4 different colors? That would be 4 down here in the ranges. Do I want 6, 8, 12? How much do I want to break up my sloping, right? 0 to 1 would be a range 1. 1 to 2 would be a range 2. 2 to 5 would be a third. 5 to 10 would be a fourth. 10 to 15 would be a fifth. 15 to 20, so now we're at 5 to 1 slopes. That's your sixth. 20 to 25, going to 4 to 1 slopes, that's your seventh. 25 to 33.333, that's your 3 to 1 slope, that's your eighth. And 33 to 100 is everything I should not design to, because every city and county out there doesn't let you go over 33%. So that is 9. I might be wrong, that might be 10, but we're going to go with 9. Now I hit the down arrow and it will populate the range details. Now I can get down here in the box, get this dual arrow going and drag it down. Now, this is the fun part. Before you ever use this style, you should set up the analysis type. If I don't use this style, it will just default to some random range, usually 8, and some random sloping like you see here. And you're like, that is the most unusable slopes in the world. And this colors. I can change the color in the scheme by simply double clicking on the color. And here's a different color. I can change the color right there. Choose a color. Either that, true. If you choose a true color, when you print, it will physically print in color regardless of your CTB or STB. So if I wanted pink to really be pink in my PDF, I would choose a true color that is pink. I would not choose it from the index color list. I would choose it from the true color list or even the color book list, but mainly true color. So if you want color, that's where you go. So this works by setting your maximum, your highest slope first, and then your minimum. If you try to do a minimum that is over the maximum, it will come up and say, no can do. You double click in the cell. I want this to be 1%. Enter in my 1 and hit enter. I know I'm going to do 1 to 2 here, so I'm going to double click in my cell, type in 2, click out somewhere, enter or click. Again, come back to my minimum and now change this to 1. Now let me show you what happens if you exceed the maximum. I'm going to put 2 in here, and I'm going to get told, dream on. You can't do that. You must do your highest value first. So I'm going to go to 5 first in the maximum, click on the minimum and do 2. Click in the maximum, set this to 10. Click in the minimum, set this to 5. Click this maximum to 15. And yeah, you see where I'm going here, right? 10. And then we're going to do, what do we say, 20, 5 to 1 sloping, 15, and then 25, that's 4 to 1 sloping, and 20. Oh, this was 33.333, because that's 3 to 1, and 25 for 4 to 1. Now, There is no way in God's green earth that we have a spot. It probably is, but 76, 65 point, whatever. Yeah, right, whatever. 100, 33.333. Okay, so that tells me when I turn on my slope arrows, any purple arrow is exceeding a design limit. I cannot use that, or I need to fill it, or I need to change it if I'm going to be touching that piece of ground. Okay, if I'm not touching that piece of ground, it can stay purple for all I care. Anyways, once I get this all set up in the surface properties, and I only have to do it this one time. If I change the surface and I come back later and I turn on the slope arrows, this will remain as I have set it up now that I've set this up. Okay, and I can hit apply. And again, I asked rebuild or not, we'll rebuild. Good to go. The other thing when you're a civil designer, the other one you will deal with the most under here is watersheds. Okay, and just to go over this really briefly, not sure if you guys do civil design or not, but if they ask you about it, you can know. In watersheds, the minimum you have to do is merge depression. I always encourage you to put a 1, match or merge the adjacent boundary watersheds, and then populate the arrow. That's all you got to do. And it will put all the watershed stuff in here if there's a ton or not. I'm just going to hit OK. And I'm not going to, oh, look, 1 point below the given limit. I put 150 out there, so there must be a point that's below 150. And close panorama, it's just informational, letting me know that it had problems. It will continually come back up every time I do something it doesn't like. Now, we have the tin turned on in the style. I want to be able to show you what I did with the slope arrows. So I'm going to select any part of the surface, tin or contour, right click, go into Edit Surface Style. On the Display tab of the style, I'm going to turn off the triangles because that gets really busy. I'm going to turn off the border. I'm going to scroll down here, though, to slope arrows and turn it on. Not going to worry about what layer it's on because it's all controlled by that analysis that we just went through and what colors those were set to. So it doesn't matter what you do, you can't turn those colors. And here we have a ton of different slope arrows. So red was the shallow, and it kind of went up in orange and green. So green is kind of steeper. Yellow was like 2%. 1 to 0 was red. So it's pretty flat in most areas. I'm not seeing a ton of purple. Ooh, there's some steep guys right there, right? 25, 30% slopes in blue. It lets me know the way the water is flowing, or in this case, the way the surface is flowing. What is the slope of this arrow, of the area? This is really handy when you're looking at things going, is this right? Is it doing the swale right? Yeah, it's doing the swale right. Sometimes I'll turn these slope arrows on while I'm designing and just make sure my surface is right. And as a surveyor, leaving those slope arrows as you go in and add in your break lines will be very helpful, believe it or not. Okay. So just to show you what watersheds looks like, I'll select the surface, right click, edit surface style, and in the display tab at the very bottom, I'll turn on watersheds and hit apply. And that's my watershed. So I have, if I was a civil designer, this would be a separate watershed from this area over here. This whole mess would be its own beast. And so would this. I'm going to turn things off now. Watersheds off, slope arrows off, apply. Okay. Let's talk about briefly in the style system here. On the borders tab, that border that I turned off, it uses a 3-dimensional. It will use either exaggerated, surface elevations, or flattened. And you can have them display or not display, and it can use a datum. Contours, if you're going to change like this is 1 foot and 5 foot contours. If I wanted to change this under contours and contour intervals, I would adjust the minor and major intervals to what I want to show. Okay. I can turn on smoothing, which this one does not have on. I'll go ahead and turn on smoothing. When I do that, down here, the slider comes into play. I'll increase it. I'll hit apply, and things got curvy in the style. Notice that? I'll go dramatically increase it and hit apply. Little curvier, dramatically decrease it and apply. Pretty pointy. Select the surface, right click, edit surface style. That was under the contours tab. I'll put it about medium and I'll hit apply. Grid, if you're using a grid surface or when you decide to do grid volume checks and things of that nature, the grid, what is the grid that it's going to make? Is it a 25 by 25 grid, a 5 by 5, a 10 by 5? You can preset that right here. So right now it's at 25. In general, I might do 10. Okay. That's if I have to make a grid. This works for volumes. When making a volume and doing a gridded cut fill map, that's where you go with what grid are we starting with. And if there's a rotation or an orientation, then it's always from the bottom left corner. Points. Like I mentioned before, when a surface is made from survey points, it makes a copy of the survey points. And just to show you that, I'll turn on points in the display tab and I'll click apply and I'll click OK. I'll zoom in a second. It's getting there. The red X is the actual surveyed shot. The blue cross is the surface point copied from the red X. You can come back and edit that surface point if you so choose, and it will not edit this survey shot. Again, right-click, select surface, right-click, edit surface style. And going back to points. Points can look different. On the points tab of the surface style dialog, you can set them to be in absolute units. You can set the look of what they are to different objects by clicking on the point object and then clicking on the More button. And what option do you want? Maybe I want that. Okay. There is a data point. These are data points. Non-destructive point symbol. These are points along the boundary edge. And a derived point. That's a point between 2 points and an intermediate point that it figured out on its own, but is not really a survey point. Okay. And it'll be represented by a circle and a dot. If I go like that, I don't think there's any out there. I'm not seeing any change. We'll see it when I'll leave these on. If we run into a circle and a dot, you'll know that's a derived point. Triangles, that's the 10 you saw earlier. Watersheds, I showed you that really quickly. That has its own legend, its own surface, its own point sizes. It has a bunch of different drains and how those are handled. The analysis tab, that deals with the others, the slope arrows, the slopes, directions, and whatnot. What type of scheme are we going to start with? Do you want rainbows, reds, blues? How do you want it to look? So when we set it up in the surface object, we told it, it came out with this color scheme, red, green, blue, and that's because it was on rainbow. But what if I had told it to do land in the style and then go to the display tab and turn on slope arrows and hit apply? And I hit OK. Hold on. Takes a second. Well, because I was in the object first and I set everything up first in the object with red, green, blue, it's still red, green, and blue. Had I not gone into the object and was on the style first, right-clicked, edit surface style, and changed it in the style like I just did under analysis and surface arrows, it's getting there. If I had changed it here first and then gone into the surface property and then did that slope arrow, it would have picked up that I selected land on the current style assigned to the surface. Okay, and then of course, display, and summary is a quick summary of the surface. So this is, when it comes to, this is the surface style, mind you, summary. But when it comes to the surface itself, you can always go to the summary, look at the highs and lows. So that's a lot of what's going on with a surface. Again, when you select the surface, you'll get the awesome ribbon up here, okay, which is identical to what's going on in here, or right-clicking sometimes. When I need to get something out of the surface and have it be two-dimensional polyline work or three-dimensional polylines, but I don't want to explode the surface because what will happen, it's an object in Civil3D. Every object in Civil3D can be exploded, and the first time you explode it, it becomes a block. After that, you explode it one more time, and it becomes live contours, which would be polylines or line work, whatever the block is made up of, based on the style that is currently shown. When you explode something in Civil3D, it disappears from the tool space. You have to recreate it. The rule of thumb in Civil3D is to never explode anything because it disappears from the database. It takes it out of being in the database and kills it completely, okay? Don't do it. Highly don't do it. Do not explode. If you need to change something, select the object and go up to Edit Surface. Now, before I mentioned that it makes some multiple points. This point's 195. I can go in here and say Modify Point. Scroll down to this point, select my blue point, watch what's going on my command line up top, hit Enter, What is my new elevation? 205. I'm going to shift it 10 feet. Did my survey point change? No. Did my surface point change? Yes. That's what I mean by it makes a copy of the survey point so that it does not affect the survey point if you need to make an elevational adjustment. I'm still in the command to select a point. I'll reselect it, hit enter, bring it back down to 195. Okay. And then to get out, escape one time. And I should get the ribbon back. There it goes. And you can right click from there. You can right click here and you're going to get the same stuff here. Okay. So edit surface lets you modify, delete, moving actual points, moving this X away from the survey point. You can raise and lower an entire surface one time. Do not do it multiple times. It only looks at the last time you raised or lowered. It will drive you nuts. If you raise it a half a foot, lower it 2.5 and bring it back up 0.3. It won't do any of it. It'll do the very last one. And it will drive you nuts. Literally drive you nuts. Raising raises the entire surface. It takes it and lifts it from where it's at today, whatever datum adjustment you need, up 0.3, down 0.2, whatever. Why would I raise a surface? This comes into play with GIS, which is why I have this GIS file in the background. Because GIS's datum is never always, most of the time, not the same as the datum I was given by my surveyor. A lot of the time, the surveyors go out there and they survey it to their heart's content. They set a base point or they set a control point and say, that's it. And that's just, the control point's this elevation. That's what it is. But then I take your survey for surface and I'm told by my county reviewer, I need more data. I need to see 300 feet outside of your project. Well, I'm not going to send my surveyor back out there to get 300 feet. Number one, he's got to go knock on doors. And nobody is going to want them to be in his backyard, surveying their backyards to get 300 more feet. Okay? Let's be real. So what I need to do is go get GIS data, GIS contouring. GIS could be as old as 1972 to as new as last year. Okay? And it really depends on how good the clearinghouse is in the GIS database. But when I get my GIS data, a lot of times the datum of that data is different. I may have 195 here, and if I bring in my GIS contours, they may be 210. There may be a 10 or 15 foot difference. So knowing that, whose surface should I raise or lower? The rule of thumb is the GIS goes up or down to match the survey. You never take your survey and match the GIS. Just don't do it, okay? If you're going to do that, go through all the trouble and change all the points too, okay? But in general, we take the GIS and move it to our data. We do that by raising and lowering that specific surface, okay? If you have a surface with a lot of points, you can smooth a surface after you've got everything in there, the break lines, the boundary line, all of the drawing objects, contours, all of it. You can smooth that surface, okay? Another handy one, and this usually starts off at the beginning, before you add points, is pasting of a surface. So you can take another surface and paste it into this one, and then add points from there. And anything that goes over that surface that's currently in there, that was pasted in there, will overwrite the pasting surface. This comes to play again with GIS, because I had to lower or raise my GIS. Now I need to marry the two so that when I do my files, when I show my sheets to my guy, he can see that it's one complete surface. There's not this 5 foot break between contours. And then I'm explaining to him what side of the surface is GIS, what side of the surface is survey. Do you know how ridiculous that is? I actually had one city do that to me. Seriously wanted that I actually tell them what side was GIS versus what side was surveyed. Oh my gosh, I was just blown away. Anyways, but that's what pasting will do. Lets you bring in another surface, copy it. It's a direct link. So you're not actually, when you paste a surface in, the other surface that you pasted, the original, remains as is. And it's a dynamic link. So if the original surface changes, then that pasted version will also change as well. It will update right along with it. It's not a static link, it's dynamic. There's also simplify the surface. It reduces the number of surface points in the 10 while keeping the accuracy. So those are your editable ones. There's also the lines. Now the lines, first of all, the style must display the item you're going to modify, whether it's a point or a 10 line. That's what these lines are, 10 lines, okay? let me turn on the 10 lines real quick. Right click, because it's still selected, edit surface style, and display, and turn on the 10s. To show you how this works, you zoom out. This is always fun. Let's say I want to change a 10 line. Select my surface, go into edit surface, go to swap edge. I'm going to change the direction. I'm just going to randomly pick one. That guy looks good. I swap the edge, he changes. I swap the edge, he changes. Okay, this is swapping an edge. Every time I make a move, I'm going to stop making moves. I'm going to right-click with the surface still highlighted and choose Surface Properties. I want to show you this. Every time you move, add something, modify something, whatever, on the Definition tab, it will appear. And you can, like I mentioned before, I didn't mean to swap these edges. I can leave them there, or I can just deselect them, or I can do a massive selection like so, right-click and tell it to remove from Definition. If you remove it, it's permanent. Okay, you can select anything here, right-click and say remove from Definition, and it's permanent. But if you just deselect the options, they will not be looked at ever again. And it tells you what it did, you know, or I can remove it, right-click and remove. Every move you make, adding to editing a surface appears in the Definition tab of the Surface Properties. And this panorama will always come up and bug the living daylights out of you. The event viewer. All right, so how do I turn off the event viewer? Because that's where you're going, okay, this thing keeps coming up. I'm going to shove it on another monitor. It's driving me nuts. The event viewer is controlled on the Settings tab of your drawing file. Scroll all the way up to your bold drawing name. Right-click your drawing, go into Edit Drawing Settings. And on the Ambient Settings tab, to save your heart, under General, takes a second, click once. Show Event Viewer, say no, and say okay. Literally, that's how you turn it off. It will never come back again on this drawing when I hit save, okay? That's it. It's done. No more Event Viewer. So let's take a look at some other things we've talked about back on Prospector tab. We did editing. Let's talk about pasting because it's a lot easier if I show you pasting in action than to just explain it. I'm going to go into my existing topo file real quick because this has this done. I love my existing topo for Ferris. It's a decent topo. You can kind of see the boundary of this, you know, what's going on here. This tin surface right here. This is my GIS surface on the GIS layer versus my surveyed surface, which again is a tin surface, my existing ground on the existing ground layer. Now, notice I haven't scrolled up yet, so I'm going to scroll way up here to my existing topo and expand my surfaces. This little box with an arrow indicates that that is what's called a data shortcut. It is pulling data, this surface, from this file right here, the GIS contours file, okay? Once I get my mouse back. So you can make a surface and you can throw it into the data shortcuts at the very bottom by simply, once you map to the data shortcut drive, you can right click on the data shortcuts and say create data shortcut. Now why would I want to do that? And then if it's not there, you can select it and throw it in there. Like I could put in Bush Circle and Highland Drive and hit OK. And now keep going back down. Highland Drive was in alignment. Bush Circle and Highland Drive are now available to be imported into any other file I wish to choose. This is a live dynamic link. In order to manipulate this data shortcut, I must be in the origin file, which that's what this is. That's where the data currently is stored. If I go to my surfaces, there's no square. It is live. It is the surface. This is the EGGIS surface. I've got this area cut out. We're good. If I change the data here, it will, for instance, if I go in here and I tell it to, I'm going to go into the surface properties, say I have an outer, and then I have the hide, and that's why there's a big hole. If I take off the hide and hit OK and rebuild the surface, you're going to see it fill in this hole, bang, and then if I save the file, Now I'm going to go back into existing topo, and we'll watch in the right corner, a balloon will appear, bottom right corner of my screen. In a second, there it goes, because I saved. It's a data shortcut, and it wants me to synchronize. And if I hit synchronize, it updated here. This is not a block. This is a dynamic link to the origin file. It's taking the data from the origin file and bringing it in here. It's kind of like an XREF, actually. The difference is I'm not bringing over 25 megabytes of surface. I'm bringing over a link, a 1 kilobyte link. So this file keeps its file size down because I used a data shortcut. Okay. Either way, that's what a data shortcut will do. So when I make my surface in this file, which is EG, I can go into EG. Let's see if we did it already. We did. I pasted in EGGIS first, and then I pasted in surface number 3, which was the build of the actual surface itself. Then, after doing all of that, generally speaking, I would select my data shortcutted surface object, right-click, go into Surface Properties, and find on the Information tab, surface style that states no display or boundary only, and click OK. Now watch it disappear. Bing, no display. And again, on surface 3, I can right-click, go into Surface Properties, and it's already set to no display. So that tells me that my EG is here. That's what's being displayed. That's the only surface being displayed. So why am I not seeing anything? Pretty simple. There's a boundary going on. It's an outer boundary, and it's this awesome white boundary. If I turn that off by selecting the surface name and going into Surface Properties on the Definition tab, and I deselect the boundary, but leave it in there because I need it later, and hit OK and rebuild the surface. Give it a chance. There we go. We are now blended with the GIS surface. That's why we blend it. And you know, look at that. Look at that. There's some random point way down there. Where is that? Is that even on here? No. See, that's got a boundary. So that is on, I'm not seeing it here. And that's how you find out you have a problem with your surface, by the way. You're like, what is this random point? Oh, well, is it 0? It's not like a ton of stuff. Let me check to see if it's 0. Right-click the name, go into Surface Properties. Is there a 0? I'll go to Statistics tab, and I'll start expanding these. Triangle, nope. Extended, 2D, grade, average grade, flat. Nope, minimum and min, max, and mean. So no, there's no 0. That tells me that I need that boundary of some sort. There's something going on. So even that's got set up to be lower 400. So there's some point randomly that got put into surface, got put into the surface, and God knows what it is. But that shows you what can happen if something's outside of your boundary and it just pulls the living daylights out of it into your stuff. So let's see here. Let's talk about feature lines and stuff. See, that's a feature line. It comes up as a feature line. And because I have one in here, I'm going to show you what it does. I'm going to right-click on my feature line and say Elevation Editor, which brings up the panorama box. That's a feature line when it's built, when it's created. And it lets me control, if you look in the background, you can see a triangle. And the triangle, those correspond to the triangles in this box. Each triangle. If you get a dot, that's an added elevation point. But the triangles are vertices. And you can adjust them, you can change them, you can lift them by a set amount, that's what that is, and then the up and down arrows. You can reset them to the surface or a surface, multiple surfaces in your file, choose one and set it, and then you can also change it by grade, either grade ahead or grade back. 3-dimensional, it's good to see it in Elevation Editor before you do it. So I'm going to show you how to do one of those in the Surface Start file. We'll do that. Let's turn off this 10 in our Surface Start. I'm going to select the surface once it's done loading back, because I hopped back and forth. Right-click, go to Edit Surface Style. I'm going to turn off the points, the 10, and the slope arrows. The more you turn on, the more RAM it eats in your computer. All right, let's draw a surface. Let's draw a feature line. Pretty simple. There are 4 different ways to get to feature line. The first one is on the Home tab of the ribbon where it says feature line under, what is that? Create design, feature line. Create feature line. Easiest one to do. Feature lines can be stored in a site or none. We're going to go none. It is preferred that you name them. Give them a name. When you go into corridoring, they have to have names, otherwise they assign a random name. Feature lines can be controlled by style, and like a surface, they have their own style, lines and arcs, and all that jazz. And we're going to make a slope. So let's go like grading ditch. Okay. They do go on a base layer. See, topo feet works for me. And if this was taking a polyline and converting a polyline to a feature line, I could erase it. I could assign elevation and weak points, remove points. But it's not. We're making one random. All right. First thing it wants to know is specify the starting point in our file. I'm going to turn off my F3s. I'm looking for the swale beginner. So group of trees up here on the north, kind of come down to the 3 in the middle, and there's a spot there called swale begin. I'll turn on my F3 for nodes. I want to grab my node here. SWL begin. Looking back on Command Center, does the elevation shown in the carets match the elevation shown on the point? It does. Hit enter. Next point. All right. And it says, specify a grade, slope, elevation difference. We're going to go elevation, E for elevation. Oh, okay. Does that match? 186.67 matches. Looks good. Keep trucking. Now, I'm going to go again. Grab another point. And it's going to remember I selected elevation last, 184.42. Looks good. Hit enter. Click again. If I can get it to behave. There it goes. 183.14. And you could, and this is like, you could just keep trucking, right? Not bad. Hold on. Let my mouse. Video card's catching up. And I'm just going to do a short one. I'm not going to do the whole thing. You can continue on and do the whole thing. Enter one more time to get back to draw feature line, and enter one more time to exit. Once it's done, you get a feature line. Comes up on the properties dialog as feature line. When you select feature line, you will find this in survey figures as well. You will find this in grading objects, parcels. Feature lines are the three-dimensional line work of Civil3D, and they filter through to all of this, not just surfaces, but also to parcels, which are found under sites. These all have parcels, and grading groups. And let's see what else. Catchments usually makes a feature line, and figures. Figures are making feature lines, okay? And they all have the same editing functions, all of them. Doesn't matter which one it is, a survey figure, a parcel, a grading group that has a daylight line on it, or a physical feature line as such. When you select that line work, you will get this ribbon every time, okay? Now I'm going to collapse these, and this is how it starts. The ribbon always looks like this. On the Modify tab of this, when you select the feature line on the Modify tab, you always get feature line properties and the style. So that's the properties of the current feature line. If I select feature line properties, this is the feature line that is selected. It's got a name, it's got a style in the information tab, and it has statistics. It has 5 vertices, or 5 points, has a 2-dimensional length, a 3-dimensional length, because it is a 3D line, minimum and maximum, and grades. Okay, cancel. As long as the feature line is still selected, the ribbon will remain above. And there are other things you can do with this feature line. You can add it into a corridor, create a surface from it, and use it in grading creations tool. And you can get what's called a quick profile, which is a profile that disappears when you regen or hit save. You can put it anywhere out there just to take a quick peek, and I'll show you. Quick profile. Existing surface. We'll go with the land desktop view, existing ground. I'm going to hit OK. Scroll back, put it somewhere over there. That is the profile of this feature line. Okay, that's the profile of it. That's a quick profile. When I regen, it's okay. When I save, it goes away. Quick profile. It's not meant to be permanent. It's a quick look. Did I draw it right? Okay. All right, let's go back into this. Selecting the feature line brings back up the awesome ribbon. Now, I can add this to the surface as a break line quickly, and it'll ask me to select the surface if there's more than one surface. I can apply a massive amount of the same name to it. I can apply a different style to it. But for us, I want to take a look at some different things. Let's take a look at the geometry side. If I hit Edit Geometry, I get the Edit Geometry flyout or expansion button. I can insert additional triangulation PIs. I can delete a PI. Now, these guys are always fun to play with. These are the different editing features. You can break a feature line in two. You can trim it between polyline line work, other feature lines, other options, other objects, even profiles and stuff like that, or alignment lines. I can join two feature lines as long as the point of joining are snapped together. So you've taken an endpoint of one feature line and snapped it to the other endpoint, and they are the same elevation. They cannot be two different elevations. Even if they're off by a tenth or a hundredth, they must be identical. Otherwise, it'll look at it and say, dream on. Feature lines are like alignments. They go and they are stationed. They are stationed from zero, how I drew it, 0 at the top. The furthest away is going to be 100, right? I can reverse that. That's what that is. That's the reverse stationing. I can fillet. I can fillet. This is always comical when you hear this in the video. Fillet. No, it's fillet, people. It's from Britain. It's fillet. It's not English. It's fillet, not fillet. You can fillet a feature line just like you can a polyline, okay? And once you fillet it, you can edit the curve that is made. Or if you drew a feature line and put in an arc during that time, because while we were going through this draw the feature line, there was an option in there. Do you want to make an arc? You can do that. You can fit a curve between three vertices. You can smooth the curve. Now, mind you, as I'm doing this, I'm hovering my mouse over each button, and you get the drop down to explain exactly what the command is. Okay. Weeding removes the additional points. Offsetting, stepped offset. So just like offsetting a line 5 feet, I can offset a feature line 5 feet, and I can drop it in elevation based on a grade or an elevation datum or a slope. I not just offset the line work, but I can say, this is my ridge top and I need to go 5 feet over and down 2%. The offset will do that. Okay. And lastly, you can insert a point at a crossing spot where two feature lines cross. That's for geometry. Just to show you how this works, let me delete a PI. Delete another one. Okay. And let me insert the PI back. I hit the insert button. Hold on. It's got to react. It inserts to the closest point, looking for that little yellow line. And 184.75, yep, because I clicked too quickly. And 186.87. Now, like a polyline, I can grab a grip and snap it to a node, okay? So same type of polyline, grabbing, grip, editing. When you right-click on a feature line, you get the same, most of the same commands that are up here, the style and properties here. You get elevation editor, which I'll show you in a second. You can raise, like a surface, raise the entire feature line up or down. You can reverse the stationing direction, and you can add it to a break line. Drive means I'm going to take my car and drive it along this feature line like it's the center line of a road at some distance, 3.5 feet off the ground. And it'll do it in 3D. It's pretty cool. Takes up a lot of RAM and a lot of time. We're not going to do that. Now, I can also, because I put this feature line out here in the middle of nowhere. And when we did this, at the initial creation box, we told it no site. We said site none. I can move this feature line to a site. And this is important, okay? Sites can separate stuff. I'll hit OK and move it to a site. Now I'm going to scroll up in my box, and I'm going to look at and close up some stuff. I'm going to expand sites, expand site 1, and there's feature lines. Here's the site, the swale feature line that we just made in the Toolspace Prospector tab. If I select that feature line again, right-click, tell it to move to site, and just go to none in the destination site and hit OK. It is now up here. When you put feature lines in a site, and there is more than one site, sites do not talk to each other, ever. So that's how you separate out the line work. I can put a bunch of feature lines in site 1, and I can make another site, call it materials, and my feature lines will be representations of the exterior edges of, say, gravel, concrete, whatever. And I don't want them to talk to the other feature lines at all. I don't want them to, when I say talk, meaning if they cross another feature line, in another site, it will ignore that. It ignores it like it doesn't even see it. It won't talk to it, okay? If they share the same site and they cross, they will see each other and marry themselves together. And you will be like pulling hair out. So you do have to think about management, file management, and how does this work? So citing-wise, you want to create a secondary site for other feature lines. Usually I right-click on sites, I say new, and the box comes up and I name my first one, grading. All feature lines for grading, go into grading. And then I do it one more, I do new, materials, concrete driveways, gravel driveways, stuff like that, go to materials. And the last one, right-click new, property. My boundary lines for my property go in my property site. I don't necessarily need site 1. There's always a default site called site 1 under sites. I don't usually use it. I make my own, okay? And that's the smarter way to go. So these can be put in their own sites to keep them separated so they don't have problems talking to other sites. Now, I can right-click and I can copy them and take the same feature line and copy it into another site and have the same feature line copied into multiple sites. And when I make the one move, all of those sites will update. I can also add this feature line as a break line. I'll say add to surface, and I can select the existing service. Awesome, this is my swale. It is a standard feature line, and I'm leaving everything else preset, and I hit OK, and it's now in my surface, okay? It does not necessarily have to be in a site to go in a surface. It doesn't matter what site it's in. If I throw it in a surface, it will be recognized by the surface as a feature line, a break line, no matter what site it's in. But when it comes to feature lines and how they communicate with each other, if you don't want them interfering with each other when they crisscross, they need to be in 2 separate sites. If you want them to interfere when they crisscross, put them in the same site. And when they interfere, meaning they'll make a whole new parcel when you get a whole bunch together and you make a fully enclosed polygon, square, triangle, rectangle, trapezoid, whatever you want to call it. When you get an enclosed polygon, it makes a parcel. And that's what happens with feature lines because they are also parcels. It's the weirdest thing. So just be forewarned. So we talked about geometry editing. When I select the feature line, there's also, I'm going to collapse geometry and click on under modify. I'm going to click edit elevations. I can edit every little vertice here. Now I can do that by entering an additional point along the line. If I hit insert point, I'll get this and I'll just grab a spot. It wants to know what this elevation is up here in my command line. I'll just accept what's there. Awesome. And I hit escape. Now I have a dot. The dot is an elevation point, okay? To delete it, I hit the delete button, find the nearest one, click it, and it's gone, okay? There are other buttons over here. Quick elevation will edit, different vertices. This is my favorite, and it's not necessarily my favorite in survey. It's my favorite for civil design because I'm going to use it to do the elevation from here, the elevation to here, ignore everything else in between, and give me the slope, the straight slope between the two and the distance. That's what this one does, okay? That's my set of grade or slope between 2 points. The other one I use the most, which is relative to survey, is grabbing it from a surface. Every little vertice needs to have its elevation set to that surface, okay? That's what that one's all about. I think here. Let me cruise through and see if I'm missing anything. I got 20 minutes left. No, we explained that. We did point groups, surface displays. We talked about break lines. Oh, we talked about managing the styles. And annotation. Ooh, annotations last. Okay. One other thing. Let me think about this. Is there anything else I need to talk about? No, not there. Things I may have missed. Oh, yes. When I select a surface and on this awesome ribbon that comes up, if I need to bring these contours out and turn them into polylines, but I want them to also stay in the surface at the same time because somebody doesn't have Civil3D, somebody has plain Jane AutoCAD or MicroStation, I don't know. Anyways, they don't understand XML. They just want you to give them polyline contours. Got it. Select the surface and you're going to extract from the surface, and this will put the object on the same layer that the style is set to, so be forewarned, You may want to change your style layer first before doing this. Extract from surface, extracting an object, and you can do a solid, and you can create a cropped, and make a DEM and publish, sending it out to the internet. But no, we're going to extract objects. And when we come up, whatever is turned on in the style will appear in this dialog. So if the border is on, watersheds, arrows, all of that, if those were turned on in the style, they would appear here. And if I wanted to specifically, let's say, and this is a good example, I'm going to get the minor contour. I'm going to deselect major, minor contour. I need to make a polyline of it for my 100-year flood elevation. That's a good one, because this happens a lot. We get the 100-year flood. What is the elevation of the 100-year flood from the FEMA format? You figured it out, but you need to display it on your computer. You need to show it to your civil designer. You need to put it in your survey. How do you do that? Without affecting your surface. And I know let's say it's a rounded number. Now it can be an uneven number. And if it's an uneven number and you figured out what it is, 677.32, or in this case, maybe it's 184.25, what you want to do is adjust your surface style contours to show 0.25 foot elevations. Find that specific contour, 184.25, then do this extract object, select the minor because it's 184.25. Don't tell it to do every single freaking contour you got. Do the drop down and select the contour from the drawing. Then when you do that, you get the pick in drawing button or select from drawing button. You select that, it disappears. Now you can select any minor contour. And I'm just going to select one like that. I'm going to hit enter. Comes back the box. I'm going to hit OK. Everything stays lit. I'm going to hit escape. But now it's a polyline on the same layer as the rest of them, but I can move it to, come on now, a different layer. And that changes its color. And I don't necessarily, it's, if I, just to show you, I can grab a grip here. That contour I grabbed it from is still there. You can see it right there, okay? That's still the surface. But it grabbed it and it made a polyline. And it gave it the elevation of what it is. 186 is the one I happen to grab. So if my FEMA format, like I said, 184.25, I would go into my style, go to the surface style, go into contours, because I need to show that specific contour 184.25, interval 0.25, get that going, click in there, get 0.25 going. Now I'm going to see every 0.25, right? Okay, so which one of these is it? If I just leave my mouse and hover it, there's 186.52. There's a 0.78. That's a 0.2, see it says Z 186.27. That little pop-up shows you what the surface elevation is at the crosshairs location. So as long as I'm close, so it tells me that's the 0.25. That's the one I want to extract. It's a major, it's coming up white. Select the surface, go to extract objects. It's a major because it's coming up white, so I'm going to leave it as major. Drop this down, select from drawing, pick the item, find the white because it's a major, select it, hit enter, hit OK, hit escape, and now I can do a match properties real quick, MA for match, grab my origin polyline, grab my going to polyline. That's my 100-year FEMA floodline. Okay, that's how you would quickly show that. And now I have to go back and fix my survey, or my surface. I'll select my surface, right click, edit surface style. Because if I leave it like this, that's how it's going to print. And nobody wants to see contours every 0.25 feet. Expand contour intervals on the contour tabs. Change the minor back to 1.00 for 1 foot. And hit OK. And now it's back. And the one I needed wasn't that one. I'm going to erase that one. Come on, erase there. Now I have my 100-year FEMA floodplain line as a polyline that I can manipulate. I can change its, width. I can show it as 0.5, so it's good and thick. I could give it a different line type, everything enabled. I could do that. So there's a lot of things you can do with extracting objects. All right, lastly, I want to label this surface under the Annotate tab of the ribbon. We're going to look at the first time ever the Add Labels dialog box. This is divided into two sections. Clicking the upper section brings out the entire dialog box. Clicking the lower section brings out the flyout for every object that you might be able to label. And it will choose, if you choose this lower section and choose any of these labels, it will choose the default that is preset in the command found in the Settings tab for that collection. I don't suggest going this route. I suggest Annotate tab, upper part of the box, click on the icon, and bring out the Add Labels dialog box. Because now I can change things on the fly. This box is free to float around, be put on another monitor, who cares? It floats, it stays up until you hit escape, and when you hit escape, that box disappears. To get it back, simply select the Annotate tab and the top of the Add Labels button on the far left. So you can add a label to any Civil3D object, including just adding a random label out there in the world called Note. Labels are handy. Well, labels will rotate when you deview twist, when you viewport twist, when you rotate your model. They're dynamic that way. They're awesome that way. I can put a label out here straight, twist do a 360 or a 180 twist. My label will rotate with it. Okay, like this, watch. Just to show you how this works. DV for deview. No, I don't rotate the world, but I am going to rotate. I'm going to select all. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to twist it 45 degrees. Oh, and I'll hit enter one more time. Okay, everything rotated, but the label stayed the same, right? And you're going, okay, Heidi, you just said that they won't do that. You're right. If I select the point group here, so this is a point group that those are in. And let's see here, which one is it? It's all points. It's got all of it. I'm going to hit properties. Right click and go into properties point group. Point elevation description is what we're seeing. If I go into the first button and it's an edit button to edit the group, give it a second. Here's my point elevation label style. On my information tab, actually it's my general tab, this is being rotated towards the object. If I change that to view and I hit OK, and I hit OK, oh, it's a miracle. Things straightened out to be read left to right instead of at 45 degrees. Oh, wow. That's so true. So if the general tab of the label, like on this general note, the very first one you see, if I go into the little edit button, if I hover over, it says press in the air to click. What looks like a little pencil icon and a paintbrush, it's edit. On that general tab, if this behavior orientation reference is set to object, it will stick it with the object and not rotate. If you set it to view, no matter the rotation of your view, it will keep it to view. It's handy, except when you're putting in street name labels and the streets have to rotate and then the label doesn't. That's a little trippy. So that one's a little tricky. Don't do it with street labels, but with the other labels that you have out there, the labels for your iron rods. Don't do it with your property line bearings and distances. Keep those to object. But your iron rod labels, yes. Your point labels, yes. Manhole information label, yes. You want those to view, because when I get this file and I have to rotate it like I just did, 45 degrees in the sheet, not in the model, mind you, in my sheet, it will automatically rotate in my sheet without rotating in the model. It's awesome that way. So I don't necessarily have to rotate my model 45, but when I bring this model in as an XREF into a sheet file, and then I rotate that sheet in the viewport to make things fit, everything that is already set to view will automatically rotate, and I won't have to go in there and manually rotate every single little one. Saves me hours of work, and your civil designers will love you for it. So view is your favorite friend. Anyways, let's talk about spot shots and labeling of a surface. So the Add Labels dialog box lets you label anything that's a Civil3D object, including lines and curves, which feature lines is a line and curve. Unless the feature line is made into a parcel, then it's a parcel. But otherwise, it's a line and curve. Same thing, and survey figures are survey figures, okay, even though they're a feature line. But they fall under survey figures. If I want to label a surface, I'm going to choose the surface option. Now the type, there are 4 or 5 different types of labels. Independent slopes, that's a slope at a point or a slope between 2 points. Spots, where I put, every place I pick, it labels a spot. Spot on a grid, cut and fill text, that ring their bell, cut and fill left to right, up and down, 5 foot apart. Contour individual one at a time. Contour, multiple, a string of contours. One line from bottom to top, every contour in between on that line. Contour multiple at an interval. Let's see, from the bottom to the top along that line, and then offset at an interval along the contours. That's what that means. So let's start with slope. Generally, there is a rise over run, a run, and percent. We'll go with percent. Not a problem. I'm going to hit the add button. Watch my command line. Do I want a 1 point or 2 point? I'm going to do a 1 point. Hit enter and pick a point. Enter and turn off O3. Zoom in and pick a point. So at the point I pick, what is that slope? Okay. To get out of it, hit escape one time. Do it again. Click the add button, and this time I'm going to say TW for 2 point. It wants to know my first point and my second point. First point and my second point. First point and my second point. Notice it's going in the direction I pick. Okay. That's sloping 1 and 2. You can change these. If I go back to the properties dialog box and I grab a label, you can change the label in the box by simply clicking in here and grabbing the different style under the General tab. And if there was more than one surface, I could change which surface it's referencing. That goes for any label out there. You have all those controls. 2 points gives you a beginning and an end and the average slope between. 1 point is 1 point, and it's right there at the diamond. Okay. Spot shots, spot elevation. There are only 2 options in here. You can have, and now an elevation, you can have it with or without a spot. No markers. I'm going to go basic. It's going to put the elevation at the basic. So I'll hit add and then point. There's my basic. Boy, that's small. Let me try X. There we go. You can go on the fly and you notice I didn't click add again. I just changed the style and kept on picking. Okay. So that's the elevation at that point. I hit escape to get out of it. When I grab an elevation label, come on, there it goes. I have the marker up here, so I can change this. And I have, again, the surface and the elevation label style. Okay. There are 2 points. The marker is the square. If I just hover, that's all I'm doing, hovering over the grip directly, I can move it. I can rotate the label. Okay. Escape once. If I hover over the diamond, I can rotate the label and not move the marker. If I grab the diamond, let me try that again. Escape twice. Once. Hold on. Grab the diamond. Now I'm going to go into what's called a dragged state. When you go into a dragged state, the leader portion of the label style is activated. You get an arrow. You get the ability to maneuver the layer label wherever. The square closest to the label will change the leader location where it marries. When you change something up by the leader, you get a square to go back. You can add another bend point on your leader. And when you change again, you get a square to return home. To return this, you hover over the diamond grip and tell it to reset label or reset label location, your choice. Reset label location takes it back to the original spot. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Now, contouring. That's always fun. Let's do multiple. And we have to choose a minor and a major, and we could care less about that. And hit add. I'm going to scroll back a little bit here. I need 2 points. Bottom and cross top. Okay. Things to note about contouring. Anywhere the contour crosses this line, it's going to put a label. If the display contour label line is set to true, it will print. And it will drive your engineer and surveyor nuts. Turn this to false. When you do so, the line is still there, but it turns blue. When you hit escape, it disappears. When you grab any of the labels, any one of them, it comes back. Okay, don't freak out. It is blue, that's good. If I don't like the option that I chose, again, I can change the label in the properties dialog, okay? How the label is reading is controlled by the style. So for the minors, in this case, if I edit the style, because it's a .00, who puts .00 on their contours? I don't know. I go into Layout. Layout tab is where everything happens. In the text area, Contents, More button. So it's Text, Contents, More. Highlight the item in the text component editor, and it tells you this is that item. Currently, the precision is .01. I don't want that. I want 1. Change it up to 1. That doesn't change it, though. That's what I would like for it to have. Hit that arrow button. Always hit that arrow button to update the style, and now it will reflect it. And you'll see that it says P0. Hit OK. Looks good there. Hit OK. And it automatically changes every time that contour is out there. If I go over here, Contour Multiple at an interval, and do the same thing, add 1, 2. Now it needs to know the interval, and you don't leave it at 100. Get fancy, do 250, do 150, something else. Notice that now I have contours everywhere. And I will tell you this, unless it's set up in the settings dialog of this box for surfaces and commands and add contour labeling, and you go in here, if you don't come in here and turn off a few things, once it gets there, slowly feeding up my video card right there. Right here, display contour label needs to say false. Okay, hit OK. Next time I was to do this, it would be false. If you don't do that, because it said true, every one of these has this display contour label true on. So you can do an en masse change. Select 2 of them, right click, and do select similar. And it grabs all of them, all 111. And now it says, hey, it's on 2 different ways, so it varies. So I hit varies, and I go, I don't want to see any of them on. And I say false, and it does them en masse. Okay? So you can do that. Don't be afraid to do that and turn them off. All right, so that's pretty much labeling in a nutshell. And again, every time you need to edit something, it's always in the Edit Current Selection dialog to change things, okay? And the commands are right here. How you start a surface, what layer they go on. It's always, what type of layers, what's the defaults that are going to come up when you access the command. That's all controlled on your Settings tab, Surface Collection. Surface styles, again, are shown on your Settings tab, Surface Collection. Same thing with your label styles and table styles. You can do tables. You can make a slope arrow table that shows the volume of the surface or the area of the surface per se, and what slopes and percentages and all that jazz. So that's all right there. I think I've just about hit everything we've talked about. I'm going through my list. I'm not seeing anything. And I think I even hit more. So we're down to our last couple minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Where am I at? I'm right there. All right. So the next survey class, session number 3, survey drafting, is going to be February 24th. That's next. Well, this is Monday. That's my bad. Next Thursday, February 24th. Ignore the Monday. I forgot to change that. We're going to go over direction, distance, and angles, drafting with the point controls, everything you see there, inquiry tool, side shots. So I know last class, session 1, we had questions about side shots, how to use the transparent toolbar commands so you can do like northing and easting at entering points. We're going to go over that next Thursday, now that we've talked about surfaces. It's kind of odd. Usually when I teach something like this is someone else's preset, and they ask me to come teach it, which is fine. Love teaching. Don't care if it's someone else's or not. I normally teach surfaces after this one. So it's just kind of backwards for me. But that's what we're going to go over next Thursday in our next class. If you have any further questions, or just want to listen to other new Civil 3D things coming out, or what's going on in the world, there is a podcast, The Cattle Call. There's a website from zentechconsultants.net where you can log on to listen to the podcast. I believe it's available just about everywhere, Spotify, iTunes, everything that you might be able to go to. And if you have questions, you can email me at training@zentechconsultants.net or give Zentech a call. They love calls. Everybody does. They also, they're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of that jazz. So I want to thank you guys all for coming out today. And I hope to see you next week on our next class. Take it easy and have a great afternoon. And I will probably upload more materials on the next class. They're slightly different than what's up there already, but feel free to take all the materials that you want to use. And that will be it for this session of Civil 3D for surveyors and the surfaces, session number 2. Catch you guys later.